You've said that a marriage must be based on trust and transparency and being shackled together. How and for how long should you get to know someone? How to set a foundation? Oh well, there's no simple answer to that. Um, I think that you should know someone well enough so that you know if you can negotiate with them, and so that you have started to formulate a vision of your joint future that you can both look forward to with enthusiasm and confidence. So, and of course that's going to depend to some degree on your level of maturity, but that means you've considered such things as, do you have a sufficient number of joint interests, and are you oriented in the same direction with regards to how you're going to handle your joint careers and the possibility of children, and the manner in which you're going to interact with your in-laws. And you have to start thinking about, you have to start considering your life together from the perspective of practicality and economics, I would say. So it can't just be that massive erotic attraction that's associated with love, although I think that's extraordinarily important, and you're unbelievably fortunate if you have that, and you should do everything you can to maintain it, and that takes effort, that takes real effort and will. But you need to ally that with maturity and intelligence, and the maturity and intelligence is, okay, we're going to put our lives together. What's that going to look like at the level of detail? How are we going to handle our finances? Where are we going to live? What are our joint plans going to be, etc. One of the things that my business partners and I plan to do in what would you say, that in as an analog to the self-authoring suite, is that we want to develop an online program to help people negotiate their relationships. And so it would actually provide an answer to this question in a more comprehensive manner, is that imagine that if you want to set up a household with someone, then there's a lot of things that you need to get straight, and you either do that by bringing your unconscious assumptions to bear on the situation and perhaps clashing where they don't match, or you sit down like a conscious and aware and articulate couple and start to negotiate what your joint responsibilities are going to be. And so that would be, well, who's responsible for the meals and when, and what are you going to eat, and who's going to get groceries, and who's going to pay the bills, and who's going to do which part of what household chores there are to do, and how is that going to be laid out fair. And so you should get to know the person that you're with well enough so that you can start discussing the real practical issues of life and determine whether or not you're capable of negotiating that. And I don't think that necessarily means that you should live together, because the evidence is actually quite strong, at least the last time I looked, that people who live together are more rather than less likely to be divorced. Now that might have nothing to do with the actual act of living together. It might be that people who are more likely to get divorced are also those who are more likely to merely live together. But I don't think that's a great solution for reasons I won't get into now. And with regards to being shackled together, is that that's a complicated one. And I learned this at least in part from reading Carl Jung. And the idea there is that unless you've really made a commitment to someone, like a lifetime commitment, and that's a serious commitment, one that you're not going to back out of, you're not going to take the relationship with the seriousness that's necessary to make it of the highest possible quality and sustainability across the course of your life. And it's really important that it is of that high quality and sustainability, because the relationship, especially when it starts to produce children, is a machine, let's say, a machine that you jointly operate, that adds immensely to the quality of your life and the depth of your life. I mean, you have the rope and strand of your life, and your partner has the strands and the rope of his or her life, and then those are tied together to make a stronger rope. And then that unites you across time, and then you undertake massive adventures together, and some of that is the establishment of a household and the establishment of joint careers and the maintenance of each other's mental and physical health and the maintenance of a high quality sexual life and all of that. Very, very challenging to do all of that. And then the joint production and care of children, which which sets you up properly for the last half of your life. So like I'm 55 now, and both my kids just got engaged in the last month. So that's pretty bloody amazing. And they're both setting up households, and they're stepping into adulthood, and I'm fortunate enough to have them in the city that I live in. So hooray for me. That's so bloody fortunate that I can hardly believe it. I mean, we've helped them out and tried to make it, what would you say, to make the possibility of their living here be something that's viable. But I'm absolutely thrilled that they're going to be around, and I'm looking forward immensely to having grandchildren. And like, what else are you going to do when you're 55? And you're going to be 55. I might have 40 more years. Like, what am I going to do with those years? Well, so I have a good marriage, thank God for that, and that's partly due to the outstanding moral quality of my wife, who I'm also extraordinarily attracted to. And we've built a life together, and we've had kids together, and we're happy with our kids. And we had plenty of struggle with our kids because one of our children, my daughter, had serious health problems, which she seems to have managed to resolve, partly as a consequence of her own brilliance. But we've set ourselves up now so that our children are respectable and mature young adults, so thank God for that. And they've got partners who we both really like, and they're going to have children, and well, hooray, that means that this next part of my life is going to be something that I can advance into with a fair bit of hope and excitement. And the idea of having little kids around again is thrilling because I really like little kids. They're really, really fun. And so the shackle together is more like it's such a, I may have even said that, but it's such a cynical way of looking at it. It's more like what you've produced is an unbreakable bond between two beings, and that makes both of them better in every way if it's a relationship that's based on trust and genuine communication. It's a very difficult thing to attain because you have to be willing to tell the truth, and the truth is generally a horrible thing. I mean, it's easy to tell truth when everyone wants to hear what you have to say, but it's very difficult to tell the truth when no one wants to hear it, least of all yourself. And so marriage gets a very bad rap in our culture, and so does child rearing. And I think that's absolute catastrophe because really being in a long-term relationship, a marriage, let's say, and having children, that's 2/3 of your life. Even if you're a highly career-oriented person, that's 2/3 of your life. And I'm a highly career-oriented person. And my family has been unbelievably important to me, and has also been something that's enabled me to be very effective in my career, because my house has been a sanctuary for me, and thank God for that, especially many times in my life, but especially over the last year. So you should get to know someone long enough to know that you two can tell the truth with each other, communicate and negotiate, because the most important part of a relationship is the fact that you can tell each other the truth and negotiate. What's my advice to young men seeking a woman for marriage and family? Yeah. Well, okay, fine. That's the same second question. That's pretty straightforward, man. I mean, you can't eliminate the necessity of being attracted to one another. That's important, and that's mysterious, So, for example, here's a funny thing. One of the things we know that attracts people to one another is bilateral symmetry. And so if you take men and you rank them by the symmetry of their faces, and then you give the asymmetrical men t-shirts to wear, clean t-shirts for a day, and the symmetrical men clean t-shirts to wear for a day, and then you give the t-shirts to women and you have them rate the odor, the women rate the odor of the symmetrical men as more attractive than the odor of the asymmetrical men. And there are other factors that determine sexual attractiveness that are based on biological factors that are that deeply embedded, in terms of smell, for example. So women also tend to not be sexually attracted to the scent of men who have, if I remember correctly, it's Rh factors that would make for potential trouble in childbirth. And often the reason that the women give for not preferring the scent of those men is that they smell too much like their brother, something like that. So there's weird, mysterious things that determine whether or not people are sexually and physically attracted to each other. And I think it's very important that that's part of a marital relationship. the next most important thing is trust, man. It's like there's no marriage that's successful without trust. You got to tell each other the truth. And one of the reasons that Jung believed that marriage and an oath, and Carl Jung, as a bond was necessary. It's really wise. It's like, telling the truth to someone is no simple thing, because there's a bunch of things about all of us that are terrible and weak and reprehensible and shameful and all of those things. And they kind of have to be brought out into the open and dealt with. And you're not going to tell the truth about yourself to someone who can run away screaming when you reveal who you are. And so the marriage bond is something like, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to handcuff myself to you, and you're going to handcuff yourself to me. And then we're going to tell each other the truth. And neither of us are going to get to run away. And so once we know the truth, then we're either going to live together in mutual torment, or we're going to try to deal with that truth and straighten ourselves out jointly. And that's going to make us more powerful and more resilient and deeper and wiser as we progress together through life. And I think that's absolutely brilliant, because if you leave a back door open, man, you're going to use it, that's for sure. And the oath is there. And this was Jung's commentary on the spiritualization of the human pair bond by Christian marriage, for example, which emphasized the what would you call it, the subordination of both members of the marital union to a higher order personality that was embodied in the figure of the Logos. So the idea is that in the Christian marriage, for example, the man isn't the boss and the woman isn't the boss. The boss is the mutual personality composed by the seeking of truth in both of them, and that's conceptualized as their joint subjugation to the Logos. And that is absolutely dead on, man. It's like the ruler of your marital life should be your vow to tell each other the truth. Because like in hard times during your life, when you've done something stupid and idiotic that might take you down, and you don't have anybody that you can turn to, if you have a partner that you can trust, you can go say, hey, I made a big financial mistake, man, and it's really torturing me, and I feel like a complete idiot, and it's really dangerous. And the person there is going to help you figure out what to do about it. And they're going to know that when they make a stupid mistake, and they're bloody well going to, that they can come and talk to you, and that you guys are going to work your way through it. And that's a big deal. And there's a couple of things our culture gets really wrong, and one is it devalues marriage. That's really a very bad idea, because marriage is like a third of your life, and maybe more. And kids are a third of your life, and your life outside of marriage and kids is a third of your life, approximately speaking. And to miss any of that is a massive, massive mistake. Now, having said that, I will also say that for some people, missing one or more of those is necessary because they have a reason. Maybe they're brilliantly creative artists and they need to devote themselves entirely to their career, or they're outstanding in some way, and so they can justify the sacrifice of one part of that triad of being to another part. But generally speaking, it's a very dangerous thing, and it shouldn't be done. And also, kids get an absolutely terrible rap, because kids are delightful if they're well behaved. One of the chapters in my new book is called Don't Let Your Children Do Anything That Makes You Dislike Them. And you can do that, especially if you discuss it thoroughly with your spouse, the person that's helping you discipline the kids. And children are the best company because they're really enthusiastic about everything. They love doing new things. They really love you, so they're happy that you're around. All you have to do is make sure they're not too hot and they're not too cold, and they've had something to eat and they're not too tired, and you don't expect them to stay engaged in something for longer than they can manage. Because we used to take our kids when they were little out to restaurants, for example, and they could sit there no problem and behave really nicely when they were 2 and 3, but they couldn't do it for more than about 45 minutes. You can't push your luck. But I also noticed with little kids is that they got antsy and unreasonable about 5 to 10 minutes before the adults did too. It's just the adults were too stupid to notice. The kids would notice right away. So back to marriage. Well, you look for someone that you're attracted to, that you love, and then you look for someone that you can bloody well trust. And then you tell them the truth. And that way maybe you can get through life, and you can have someone to weave the rope of your being with, and together to make your joint rope stronger, and you can have some continuity in your narrative, and you can have children, and then you can have grandchildren, and like you can have a life, man. And there's nothing, you're so fortunate if you can manage that. And so okay, so there's that one. So what's my advice to young men seeking a woman for marriage and family? Yeah, well, and also, marry someone you think would be a good mother and that has enough sense, generally speaking, to know that she wants children. Now, some women don't want children, and fair enough. And some women perhaps shouldn't have children. That's also possible. But the general rule of thumb is, especially once a woman's, in her mid-20s, if she doesn't know that she wants children or won't admit it, unless she has a viciously important reason, then she's not oriented properly psychologically. She isn't. She doesn't know what's important in life. Now, that might also be the case with you, and it probably is. But as a rule of thumb, that's a really good one.